Okay, in this video, what we're going to do is talk about NURBS curves. NURBS curves really are the foundation for working with any type of NURBS modeling whatsoever. So the very first thing we need to know is how do we go about creating a NURBS curve? There's multiple ways to do it. Let me bring your attention over here to the main menu bar up under Create. We can drop down to the CV curve tool. We've got the EP curve tool. We've got the pencil curve tool. And we've got some arc tools as well. We'll actually take a look at some of the arc tools a little bit later on. Pencil curve, we're not worried about that one at the moment. Let's go ahead and start out with the CV curve tool. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the options as well. You'll notice up under options, we've got several different things that we can control. We'll go ahead and reset the tool. First of all, we've got the curve degree, we've got the knot spacing, and we've got multiple in knots, yes or no. Now, we'll get back to all of these in just a minute. Let's start out with just the simple process of creating a curve. So I'm going to go ahead and click. Now at this point, all I've made is a little yellow square. Interesting. We don't see a curve. We need to create another CV. Now I'm going to create another one. Now take a look at this. Now we have a U that's currently highlighted yellow. A little square, little U, and a line. We still do not have a true curve. Let's go ahead and click again. Now we have a dot. Let's click again. Aha! Now we have a curve. And we had 4 different CVs required to give us this curve. Why is that? Well, it's because of the curve degree that was specified over in the tool settings dialog determined how many CVs were required before we got the first span of the curve. The higher the curve degree, the more accuracy we get. So, if I was to create one more CV, I'm going to get another span. A span is required, at least one, for you to see a curve. Right now, this is one span. Let me go ahead and hit Enter. Now what I want to do is bring up my attribute editor real quick, and we can take a look at the curve shape node. Look at its spans. It's currently set to 1. And it has a min-max value of 0 to 1. We'll cover this in just a minute. So we've got one span. It required us to create 4 CVs to get it. Let's go ahead and close the attribute editor for just a second. Come back up to Create, CV Curve Tool. Let's create the same thing. First one, which gives us a little square. Second one, which is a U. Third one, which is a dot. Fourth one, which presents us with a span, so we now have an actual curve to work with. Now I'm going to click again. And for the beginners out there, a lot of you guys may think that, well, another 4 CVs are required to get the next span. And that's simply not true. As I continue clicking, each click I do generates another span. So at this point, I should have 2 spans, 3 spans, 4 spans. So I should have 4 spans with this curve. Let's go ahead and hit Enter. And again, we'll open up the attribute editor, and you can see down here on spans, we now have 4. Interesting. So why does it require 4 different CVs to get our first span? Well, the degree is determining the accuracy. So let's come back up here to Create. Come down to the CV Curve tool again. Curve degree. So this is how accurate is your curve going to be. And really, it's nothing more than how many CVs plus 1 are required for generating the first span of the curve. So if we go ahead and come down to a linear curve, watch this. Click. All right, we got our first CV down, which is an open box. We'll talk about the different shapes of CVs in just a few minutes. We'll click a second time, and now I get a U. Oh, I also get a curve. So that's one span because the curve degree specifies how many CVs are required, and then we simply add 1 to it. And we can look at that 1 as being an anchor point. That 1 is also always labeled as number 0, so it'd be CV0. So if this was CV0, this would be CV1. And we can always see what number a CV has by looking up in the title bar with that CV selected. You can see up here. We have curve3.CV1, which means this one back over here is going to be 0. If I click again, bing, now we've got CV2, CV3. How many spans have I created? 1, 2, 3. Let's go ahead and hit Enter, open up the attribute editor, and we can confirm that right here. Spans is 3. All right. I promise you I'm about to move on, but one more time, let's go ahead and move up to something a bit crazier. Let's go ahead and do a 7. How many CVs are going to be required? Well, it's going to be the degree number plus 1, so we're going to need at least 8. Let's go ahead and click the first one, and to confirm that it is indeed 0, let's look at the title bar on the top, CV0. So that's the first CV, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, here comes 8, span. We've got one span. Now remember, each click after this represents a new span. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll take it all the way up to 5 spans, hit enter, and again open up the attribute editor to confirm this. And take a look. Spans is indeed set to 5. Very, very nice. So let's go ahead and come back up here once again, come back down to the CV curve tool and bring our attention back over here. So what curve degree do we use when we're modeling? Well, if you need something that's very hard-edged, I mean every single edge is hard, there's no curvature whatsoever, you can get away with using linear. 2 is going to give you just a little bit of precision. With a 2-degree curve, you are only able to cross over the line twice. So watch this. Any axis point, you can cross it twice. 0, 1, 2. Look at that. So if I was to now come back in here, I'm going to hit Insert, which is kind of a fancy way to do this. We'll talk about it in just a minute for manipulating CVs while building a curve. Take a look. I've used a 2-degree curve to pass over the axes twice. Once and coming back once. There's no way you can get 3 times out of it. To get 3 times, we'd need to go up to a 3 cubic. What I'm getting at is the higher the degree, the more precision you have, the more fine-tuning you can deal with, and basically the more work you're going to have to do because you're going to have more components. Because remember, CVs, of course, are components of a NURBS surface or curve. So there you go. Pretty simple, huh? When working with a 3-degree cubic, they're also referred to from time to time as like S-curves because we can, with one of these, cross over 3 times and make an S pattern. And we can simply climb up from there with 7-degree, I think, allowing you to pass like 5 times or something. Now, 5-degree and 7-degree curves are used in, you could just say, design and engineering. CAD people, when developing anything from tennis shoes to watches that are putting things together inside applications like studio tools, will be using very high curve degrees so that they get a very high level of precision. So that's all I want you to know about that. Generally, in modeling in Maya, what we're going to do, let's go ahead and come over here and just complete this tool, and we'll reactivate it real quick. Generally, you're going to use 3-degree cubic. And we'll go ahead and reset the tool, and you'll see that by default, that is what it's set to, 3 cubic. So there you go. You're not going to find yourself using 5 or 7, and I'd recommend it against it unless you're doing some sort of engineering work. Now, knot spacing. First of all, we don't even know what a knot is. We'll come to that in just a second when I start talking about the anatomy of a curve. Uniform and chord length. Different parameterization types available. There's that word parameter again. Ooh, scary. Not really. We'll be talking about parameterization soon. And multiple end knots, don't worry about this right now. So everything else inside this box, don't worry about. Let's keep things really, really simple. All right, so, wow, man, I've created a bunch of curves. Let's come back down here. And in using the CV curve tool, let me kind of reiterate what I did just a second ago. We know that simply clicking is going to provide CVs for us while generating our curve like I'm doing here. At any point, if you need to make a modification to the location of one of your CVs, all you need to do is hit the Insert key. We're still in the tool. In other words, we're not finished with this curve yet. I can then come back, grab a CV, manipulate it as I am doing here, and maybe move this guy around, this guy out. When I'm done, I simply hit Insert. Notice that my mouse pointer went back to crosshairs, indicating that I'm still in the CV curve tool and can continue clicking until I'm done with the curve. Once I'm done, I can simply hit Insert. So also I can middle click, drag around, you get the idea. It's very simple stuff. Also with the Insert key, I can come back and hit Delete on any CV that I didn't really mean to create in that surface, or excuse me, curve, and it will be gone. So real simple stuff. And of course, once you're done, the Insert key again. So that's creating a curve using the CV curve tool. Now, let's go ahead and do a new scene real quick. Come back up here to create. Now we have an EP curve tool. And when I click on this, look at this. We pretty much have the same settings that were available over on the CV curve settings just a minute ago. Well, are we making a different type of NURBS curve? No. We're creating the curve in a different method. We're creating it through the placement of edit points or knots. Those two words are used interchangeably, as opposed to creating the curve through the placement of CVs. Now, What is an edit point? Well, we're going to get into the anatomy in just a second, but edit points are there on every single NURBS curve you have, as well as CVs. Up to this point, you have only seen CVs because that's what we've been placing, and in a lot of the other videos, that's what we've been manipulating when we've been changing the shape of like the curtains in the Talented Ball project, etc. But edit points have existed. They've been there. 2 edit points are required to have a single span. And remember, we cannot have a curve unless we have at least 1 span. So using the EP curve tool, we are able to generate a curve much faster. Click, click, and I already have a span. Ooh, it's a straight line, so it looks kind of scary, as if I don't have all the CVs required to make this guy nice and smooth looking. That's not true. Let me go ahead and hit enter to complete the tool operation. Switch over into components real quick, just so that I can show you we do indeed have 4 CVs because this was a 3-degree curve. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And look at the shapes of them. An open square, the U, curve, or excuse me, CV and CV. So let's grab these 2 CVs. We'll grab our move tool. We can move it out. And you can see we still have curvature capabilities by using the EP curve tool. It's just really handy being able to create that first span a lot quicker. And this can become really handy in creating rigs where you need a single span curve that you're going to use to snap something to, just as a temporary reference or something. Let's come back up here again to create, back down to EP curve tool. And just for the heck of it, let's go ahead and select a 7-degree curve and click. And if I click one more time, bink, look at that. I did not have to click a total of 8 times like you saw just a minute ago when generating that first span. Let's click one more time. And look, we do have curvature in place, but we have a total of 9 CVs and 2 spans, but we were able to pull that off by clicking only 1, 2, 3 times. Let's go ahead and reset this tool. Well, let's go ahead and hit enter first. And let's come back over here into the EP curve tool. We'll reset the tool just so it's 3-degree. Coming up here shortly, we'll switch back to the channel box. And what I want to do is select this curve and show you what I was talking about. We do indeed have 2 spans like I was talking about. It is a 7-degree curve. And now remember, I said that's going to be 9 CVs. Let's take a look. Components. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Haha. Simple, simple. So I am right. Now, with that, now we've talked a little bit about how we can go about creating these NURBS curves. Let's talk for a second about the anatomy of a NURBS curve. In other words, the components that are available for us to deal with. Well, the first thing is spans. We know that we have spans available, and these spans represent any length of curve between 2 edit points. Okay, that means we have edit points. They're a component. Now, spans aren't really a component that you're going to go in and grab and manipulate, but it is a component of the curve itself because it's a bunch of spans tied together that give you the curve you're looking at in your viewport. So let's, before we get into edit points, let's just start out simple. Everybody knows what a CV is. You guys have been seeing these. Now, what's the open square for? The open square, if you haven't figured it out already, indicates the start of the NURBS curve. And this is very important when dealing with a lot of the different tools used to generate surfaces out of curve networks. Basically, you need to understand what side your curve starts from. And you can always find out quickly by switching over into a component mode, look at the CVs, and look for the open square. The second CV is a U. This is indicating the U direction of the curve. And then from there on out, it's just dot, 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 all the way to the very end. So the first 2 CVs, they're the most important, where the curve starts and the U direction, which of course there is only one direction we can go here. That's because, well, it's not a surface, which would, in that case, have 2 different directions. It's just a line, more or less, a curvy line. So that's CVs. Now let's take a look at edit points. And the way I want to do this is I'm going to come up here to my points. I'm going to turn them off. That's why all the CVs go away, but I'm still in a component mode. Now let's come over here to the second option here, and this is by parameter points. Let's go ahead and right-click, and I'm going to turn on NURBS Edit Points. Boom. There's an edit point. It's a little X. There's an edit point, and there's an edit point. I better have 3. Why is that? Because remember, I said that this curve right here has 2 spans, and I showed you that in the attribute editor. And what did I tell you about a span? A span is a segment of curve that exists between 2 edit points. So 1, 2. So this line right in here, that's span number 1. And then 1, 2. Here's span number 2. Okay, so there's our 2 spans. This means that we have 3 different edit points. 1, 2, 3. Very simple to figure that one out. Okay. Now, edit points are also referred to as knots. Anytime you see a tool setting say leave multi-knots, what it's talking about is leave 2 edit points on top of one another. And this is important later on when you get into more complex modeling and you're trying to maintain a very specific shape when you start merging curves together. If you take away multi-knots, you could end up deriving a different shape from the 2 curves that you basically merged together, if you will, or attached. And we'll talk about this a little bit later on. So that's edit points or knots. What else do we have? Well, let's see. We have holes. Let's go ahead and turn that off and come over here and turn on holes. And it's still drawing the curve. Well, let's just deselect them. That's because I've got them selected. Now let's come back up here and turn on NURBS CVs. Take a look at this. A hole is a line, a straight line, that passes through every single CV. And we can see that taking place right here. Holes are very important when modeling, and you need to grab a consecutive row of CVs. You can simply turn on holes, grab that hole, and you have all of the CVs. Of course, I still have the ability to go in and grab the CVs on an individual basis. A hole is not something that you can manipulate per se. Again, once you select a hole, you're really doing nothing more than selecting all of the CVs. Just grab my move tool, start moving these around, and you can see that's all I'm doing, moving the CVs. Not super handy when dealing with curves, but very handy when you start working with NURBS surfaces. And we'll come back and take a look at this in the next video when we start talking about NURBS surfaces. So only one more thing I'd like to talk about with NURBS curves, and that is the, let's see, we'll just come up here, we'll turn off, and I'm going to turn on curve points. And then let's just click to deselect all of the CVs. Now, curve points is yet another component. Not so much a component that you can go in and move around. It's really more of a marker, if you will. And this marker is extremely important in being able to tell a specific tool that I need an operation done right here. So I can come in here, I can click, I can drag, and then once I have my marker or a curve point wherever I'd like, then I can come up here to edit curves. I can do things like detach the curve. And when I say detach, look what happens when I go back into component mode. It detached into 2 different curves right at the point where I had placed the curve point. So curve points are very handy. Also when you need to find a precise location. So I'm just undoing right now. So I put all this back together. There we go. And we'll grab a curve point. Take a look up here. Curve2.u and this crazy number. This is allowing me to see exactly where this point is on the curve. So if I was to drag this curve all the way back to the beginning, we can look up here and see that we're at 0. And as I drag it further along, now we're at 1.12, a little bit further, 1.17, all the way to the end, 2. So we can use this for deriving an exact location along a curve. Simple enough. Okay, so that's pretty much all I wanted to look at in regards to the anatomy of a curve. Just CVs, edit points, holes, and curve points. Just remember, with CVs, they don't lie on the curve itself unless you've got a 1-degree curve, which in that case it only makes sense because it's a straight line. So let's go ahead and switch back over to CVs real quick. So you can see here the CVs, they start to fall off of the, especially if I start moving them around, that'll make it a lot more apparent. There we go, like such. You will always have the start CV and the end CV on the curve itself. All the rest, it's a whole different story. We still got the break there. That's funny. How do I know that? Because there is, as a matter of fact, let's just grab this and this guy here and pull you away. And we'll move over here and just pull him away because I've got another open square indicating the start of yet another curve and a U up there. But anyway, CVs, we use them to shape our curves and our surfaces. We've already seen that. Edit points, are used to represent where our spans are tied together. Start of a span, end of a span. That is a span. This is a span. And then over here, we got, well, one span because we only see 2 X's. Let's find out. We'll grab this one curve, open up the attribute editor, spans, 1. Yes, indeed. Okay. Finally, holes, which are used to select consecutive rows, or continuous rows, rows of CVs. And that's with holes, and curve points allow you to place a marker and even multiple markers. If I come over here and say grab my NURBS curve point, I can put one there, hold the shift key down, put one there, put one there, put one there, put one there, and now say chop this up at all of these places. It's very handy. And let's see. I guess just one more thing I want to talk about with NURBS curves. This will be a really quick one. And that is, this curve does not look super smooth, and that's one of the things I've been preaching, is that with NURBS, surfaces and curves, we get smooth curves and surfaces. Well, with 1, 2, and 3, as talked about earlier in the introduction to NURBS, we do have resolution control in our viewport. So 1, 2, 3, and when I hit 3, you'll notice that it gets smoother, smoother, and smoother. Okay, so with that, that's pretty much going to wrap up this basic introduction to NURBS curves. You're going to find yourself using them quite a bit with NURBS modeling, because in the end, you're going to need to create curves to generate our surfaces, unless you're just going to jump in and start using NURBS primitives. And in the end, that's not going to always be the case. So in the next video, we're going to take a close look at NURBS surfaces and the anatomy of them as well. And so with that, that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks a lot.